Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another special WWDC episode of AppStories that's brought to you by Collide. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is MacStories Editor-in-Chief, Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. I'm looking at you right now, and this is a very fun and special episode of AppStories, and I'm excited.
I know. We've been doing daily episodes of AppStories during WWDC, but this is a really special episode because we're sitting in Cupertino in Apple's Developer Center, the brand new Developer Center right across the street from Apple Park. Apple was kind enough to invite us to this, so thanks for everybody who's been working to make this happen. We're here today to talk to some of the ADA winners that were revealed last night. Now, we have a post up on the site on macstories.net where you can see all of the ADA winners and read a little bit more about their apps. But I want to first introduce who we've got here with us today before we dive into some questions about each of their apps. First of all, we have a winner for the Inclusivity Award for the ADAs, which is Procreate by Savage Interactive. It's a beautiful digital art studio that leverages the power of the iPad to remove the complexity of and lets artists focus on their work. With us today to talk about that is Claire Dest. Welcome to the show, Claire.
Hi there.
We've also got Curtis Herbert, who is the maker of Slopes. We know Curtis pretty well, don't we, Federico?
Yes, it's a familiar face. We've met before at
very familiar
WWDCs
face
in the past.
Hello again.
Hello, Curtis. It's good to have you with us. Curtis is he won an award for the interaction category for the ADAs. And then finally, we have Joe Lee from Netmarble, whose open world RPG Marvel Future Revolution won an ADA for innovation in that category. Hi, Joe.
Hello.
Good to have you here. All right, Federico, why don't we dive into these questions? And I just want to, for listeners who might not be familiar with your apps, I'd like everyone to kind of let me know a little bit about what the app does, what it's for, and that sort of thing. So, Claire, I'm going to kick it off with you with Procreate, the digital art app for the iPad. Could you explain a little bit about what Procreate is all about?
Well, I think you explained it pretty well, that about reducing the complexity. Like, what we really hope is that it's really easy for people to pick up, but also the professional features are there if they just want to keep going with their journey of creativity. One of the best bits of feedback I always get is that it allowed people to rediscover that part of themselves as creatives, and that it provides a sort of a really approachable experience when it comes to getting back into creativity or starting it for the first time. But then, you know, all the kinds of hard-hitting illustration features are there once you need them.
One of the things that was highlighted during the ADAs last night were the accessibility features of Procreate. Could you tell us a little bit about what kind of accessibility features are in Procreate? So
we tried to talk to all kinds of artists to see what kind of challenges they were having with Procreate. And so it was a range of things from, like, we introduced some features to help with cognitive load, to help find brushes that you were using last, or if you wanted to find the brush size that you're using before. And we found with almost all the features that it actually just made the app better for everyone. Everyone has moments where they feel overwhelmed and just need a little bit of help. But then there's things like, we love multi-touch, but for some people that's just not an option. So you can do all the things that you could do with multi-touch with just one finger or one touch. And also we've got, we really, not everyone can see colours in the same ways, and often you'd be surprised how many artists there actually are, even professional artists, that see colours in a different way. So we allow them to both name their colours, but also we use Apple's accessibility naming for colours, so that if you use the eyedropper or colour picker, you get a little description of what the colour is, so you can go back and find that colour easily again, or you can stick to brand colours, whatever you need to do. And also we have one of the things we're most proud of is the motion filtering for strokes, which will really, it helps everyone from being on a train or a bus when you've got some vibrations, to people who have hand tremors, to just being able to do better inking.
Oh, nice.
So yeah,
that's really cool.
So we really over the whole range, we just found that it just made the app better for everyone.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So Claire, first of all, I mean, obviously, congratulations for the Apple Design Award. I'm, huge fan of the app. But that's the thing. Like, I've always been a huge fan of the app, but I gotta be honest with you, I absolutely cannot draw anything. Like, it's just not
Me either,
a
really.
skill that I have. But I'm that kind of user. Like, I'm the kind of person who's a fan of these products from a distance, and I'm fortunate enough to have someone with me, my partner. She can draw, and so I've used her, if you will, as as my official testing person for apps like Procreate and features like drawing in notes. Like she's my go-to person for testing Procreate and that kind of these kind of apps. And obviously, one of the things that has always stood out to me for Procreate is how historically you've always tapped into the power of the iPad, and then later with the iPad Pro, all these unique features of the iPad Pro, right? Starting in 2015 with the first Apple Pencil, and then following the evolution of the platform. So you got multiple versions of the iPad Pro, the Liquid Retina XDR display, the second generation Apple Pencil. And so all these technologies coming together to really make Procreate this first-class iPad experience. And I kind of wanted to know from you, from your perspective, what the evolution of Procreate as a native iPad, first-class iPad experience has been over time. Sort of, what are some of the anecdotes that you may remember? What are some of the, what's the work that has gone into making Procreate really shine on the iPad?
Well, as you mentioned, like because we're native and we've stuck to iPad and iPhone, it means that we've been able to like respond to each one of those technology changes, which has really like been great. But like you mentioned Apple Pencil, like that was really the big turning point for Procreate, because we were working with a bunch of different styluses that had different issues, but nothing compared with the Apple Pencil when it came. So, and then when they started to release Apple Pencil on like consumer level devices as well, that was another huge turning point. So because like the precision of the Apple Pencil is just, and the tilt support and the pressure sensitivity is just unmatched. So that was huge. We also just any kind of additions to GPU acceleration, that like we do a lot of work to make sure that we take advantage of any changes there, to make sure that, because a big part that's sort of unseen in Procreate is that responsiveness. Mm-hmm. And that's really about how we use the GPU.
Right. And and I have to imagine that, like what you mentioned about sort of other iPads, right, getting access to the Apple Pencil. Like, for example, I'm thinking of the iPad Air with the M1 and the support for the Apple Pencil. I suppose that really opened up the audience for, the kind of users that can enjoy Procreate and the kind of users that can, just create art in the app. What kind of users have you heard from over the years?
Well, it was even really like the iPad 6, where wow. Very much a sort of education level device that got the Apple Pencil about 4 years ago. That was great, because then we saw a big influx of kids using Procreate, which has really become a big part of our market, and we hope that they'll continue to use it over time.
So, Claire, I was wondering, what's the feedback that you've gotten from the accessibility community about Procreate and the tools that you've built into it?
I think that's just going to be something that's going to happen more and more over time, because people will suddenly be able to use it that weren't able to use it before. Mm-hmm. And so we hope to get continual feedback from those people.
And how's the reception been within that community? Are people enjoying using the app?
Well, like I mentioned, like my favorite feedback is always that it helped me find that creative part of myself mm-hmm. again. Mm-hmm. And to hear that from people who have additional barriers to being able to create is just even more special.
Yeah.
So.
No, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I think it's it's a powerful feeling, right? When you have software like Procreate that, even though even someone like myself, like I mentioned, that I can't draw, but when the software makes you feel like you want to, that is such a unique feeling, I think, right? And mm-hmm. really, I feel like of all the platforms where Procreate is available, the iPad is the best one, because it's like you really have the screen in your hands and you have the pencil, and it's like, even though usually I can't draw and I'm terrible at it, but this app makes me feel like I want to do it and I want to try. And that's a powerful thing in software to achieve. So congrats for, making people like myself feel like that.
Yeah, that's great. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. So it's wonderful to hear that from other people.
This episode of App Stories and all of our WWDC coverage is brought to you by Collide. Collide sends employees important, timely, and relevant security recommendations for their Linux, Mac, and Windows devices right inside Slack. Collide is perfect for organizations that care deeply about compliance and security, but don't want to get there by locking down devices to the point where they become unusable. Instead of frustrating your employees, Collide educates them about security and device management while directing them to fix important problems. Visit collide.com/appstories to sign up today. That's KOLIDE.com/appstories. Enter your email when prompted to receive your free Collide gift bundle after trial activation. At Collide, they know that end users are IT admins' most significant untapped resource and key to solving the most challenging to fix security issues. Things like instructing developers to set passphrases on unencrypted SSH keys, finding plaintext two-factor backup codes, and teaching end users how to store them securely, and convincing employees to uninstall evil browser extensions that may sell their browser history. Those are just some of the many use cases not solved by locking down devices. You can try Collide with all of its features on an unlimited number of devices for free for 14 days. No credit card required. Try it out at collide.com/appstories. That's KOLIDE.com/appstories. Our thanks to Collide for their support of the show. All right, why don't we move on and speak to Curtis Herbert, the maker of Slopes. Curtis, first of all, congratulations on the ADA.
Thank you.
Slopes is a fantastic skiing and snowboarding tracking app that uses all sorts of technologies and collects a lot of data. And for listeners, Curtis, could you explain a little bit what are some of the things that the app does?
So it mostly started as a tracking app. So you can think Nike Plus, Runkeeper, Strava, those apps that runners and cyclists have. Mm-hmm. It does that for skiing and snowboarding. So that's kind of boiling it down to its simplest. But I like to think of it as kind of like a ski journal. Because these are our great days. We look forward to skiing, snowboarding. This is our break from work. We go on big vacations for this. So this is also kind of a place for memories is the way I look at it, which is always kind of hard to articulate. It sounds so kind of lofty. But it really is like a journal for that kind of stuff. So you can go back and, it's the middle of summer and see your favorite photos from that winter and stuff like that. But then recently it's also evolved to more resort information kind of stuff. So when you're at the ski resort, having access to digital trail maps to see where you are, to see where your friends are. It now has like a Find My kind of capability. So you can see exactly where your friends are on the ski slope in case you get separated. And information to access to stuff like ski patrol, contact information, stuff like that. So it's really kind of evolved from just a tracking app over the last couple of years into something that's also more of just an information kind of app. Kind of hoping long-term I could be like the Apple Maps of ski resorts. That's part of my long-term vision there that we're working towards over the next couple of years.
That's a really interesting way to think of it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and Curtis, as obviously congratulations from me as well. As John mentioned a few minutes ago, we've known you for a long time. We remember Slopes from the very first versions, I believe. How many years ago was that?
2013 is when it started. 2015 is when I think I probably met you all, because that's when 2.0 came out, that I tried to start to make it a full-time thing. Right. 2013 was just nights and weekends.
Right. And when you started, it was not your main job.
No. It wasn't until 2016 that I was able to go full-time on it. A year after I kind of got serious, quote unquote, I was able to go full-time.
Right. And over the years, something that we've, again, I don't ski. Do you ski, John?
I have skied. I wouldn't say I'm a skier.
You have.
If you've skied, you're a skier. We are not a gatekeeping community. You're a skier.
Good.
Okay. But you've been one, John. That's my question. I have. You have been one. Okay. But so one of the things that we've seen with Slopes over the years is sort of this continuous iteration from you. Of continuing to polish the app, release after the release, and changing a design here and there, adding new features, keeping up with new APIs, keeping up with new frameworks. What's that like Like, and I don't mean this to make you feel old, like, oh, it's now you've been doing this for 10 years, but like
it took you 10 years to get it right. Congratulations.
no,
Yeah,
but really, what does it feel like to work on the same thing? And I mean, honestly, I can relate, with AppStories, it's 13 years.
Yeah.
What does it feel like for you?
A dream, a nightmare, kind of a mix. I mean, it is an aggressive pace of keeping up with things, and I'm a one-man team for design and development on the iOS side of things. So it's a lot to keep up with, both matching the speed that Apple can go at some years, which some dubs a little bit less for me, some dubs a lot. So I have that, and then I also have my own features and ideas that I want to build that are unrelated to the Apple cycle of things. So it's a lot to balance, and in that way, it can definitely be a lot of stress, honestly. But at the same time, it's also an absolute dream, because I'm getting to work on essentially a passion project, just like AppStories is for you. Like, it's what I love to do. So that work doesn't necessarily come from a place of, I don't want to show up for work. There are those days. But it's really, I have these ideas on my head that I just kind of have to get out onto the page, so to speak. So I'm showing up excited most of the time for it. So in that way, it's a dream to be able to work on it for 9 years and just change things and see how my ideas evolve and all that kind of stuff. Like, kind of feels like a sandbox that I've been able to play in for 9 years.
Yeah. Curtis, I want to go back for a moment to the features of the app and its design, because as you mentioned before, Slopes does so much more than just track your runs at this point. There's all sorts of information in it. You're using a lot of the sensors in the iPhone. You're using an Apple Watch. But at the same time, despite all these features and sensors and everything that you're using to track everything, the app is a really clean, sophisticated, elegant design where you're at the top of the hill, you just hit a button and you go. And later on, you can go back and you can look at all the data that was collected, and it's presented in a way that's not, tables of data and lots of, spreadsheets or anything. It looks beautiful, and it shows you the map of the mountain, and it shows you all sorts of things that makes it more of an experience to kind of relive what you did on the slopes that day. What's it like trying to do that? It seems to me that it's got to be very difficult to synthesize all that stuff down and boil it down to a point where it's very easy for a user to use, but you're at the same time leveraging that technology and all those complex features in a way that gives them a more rich experience.
Yeah, it's hard. I think part of it is just I'm lucky that I have a developer background. I have, I would say, a very amateur design background. Been playing with Photoshop since the web in the 90s, and I ski and snowboard. So like a lot of those ideas where it's being boiled down is coming from just how do I think about things. Like one of the genesis of Slopes was looking at an app that had those tables, had those charts. And for example, when you would go down a run, you would get a chart of your altitude and then a secondary chart of your speed. And you're trying to, and then you have a map somewhere else on another screen, and you're trying to correlate all that data. And I'm looking at it and I'm just thinking of how I think of it as like, I view this as a 3D mountain in my head. Like that's what I see. I see myself going down a hill. And that was kind of one of the original aha moments was coming up with a very primitive, in 2013, OpenGL 3D graph of like, here's what your run looks like in 3D with a speed heat map. Because that's how I think about it. And I think that combination of those the two disciplines and the sport for me just kind of gives me a potentially unique insight into like, oh, I know what the technology can do, and I at least have a non-terrible design sense. And I love to snowboard, so like my brain can kind of put all those pieces together where normally that might be a 3, 4, 20-person team. And I feel like you don't get that collaboration as easily as you do when it's 3 voices in your head and you're, basically a schizophrenic running a team. And the designer yelling at the developer and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it's challenging until you take a step back and look at what you love and kind of, how do I look at this? How do I think about it? And then you build something around that.
Mm-hmm. Something that I think also impressed us over the years is how you were able to turn what is arguably a seasonal product into a sustainable business that has been going for 10 years. And there's also the other question of like, we're coming out of 2 years of pandemic, and maybe people haven't necessarily been, going to ski resorts and, doing those kinds of activities. But you've tapped into this modern app store infrastructure for these new flexible business models that developers can now use. So how did you deal with that? And also in the context of the past 2 years?
A lot of experimentation. So anyone who follows me on Twitter tends to know I put my numbers out there. I put the A/B tests I'm trying. I try and be very public and share with what I'm trying, because we all have to figure this stuff out. Like, we're all in this together as developers. So it's just a lot of aggressive experimentation. Subscriptions and trials and stuff like that. 2015, when I said I tried to get serious with the app, was moving to subscriptions. And just trying that stuff and slowly figuring out what works for my market, what works in the App Store. And the seasonal, like, there's no way to get around that. The secret there is to just get all the money in January, February, March, and then slowly use that over the year and have really good budget planning. Yeah. That's what it comes down to. Have good budget planning in my case. Because, I earn no money over the summer, basically. But it's just aggressive experimentation. And I think that slopes. I mean, I think that's what you got to a little bit earlier with the like iterating on the design, trying new ideas, throwing out what I did 3 years ago, trying something new, is just putting something out there, seeing what works and what doesn't, and then adapting from that and not looking at anything and being like, yep, that was done. That was perfect. No, I mean, I'm a developer at heart. Everything I wrote 2 years ago is terrible and I want to throw it out. And it's the same with design, same with business model. Like, I just got to keep trying and figure it out. And then eventually you start to figure it out.
Yeah. So to wrap up this segment with you, Curtis, what's the advice? After all this, what's the advice that you would give to an aspiring young developer who's maybe looking to get started, maybe has an idea, and maybe they're not sure. I'm not sure if it's gonna work, if there's gonna be an audience for it. What am I even doing? With the context of your 9 years of working on this and an Apple Design Award, what would your advice be?
Probably a combination of just ship something. You got to get it out there. Like, to the heart of what I said in the last question, experiment. Like, that's really what a lot of the success I found has come down to, is putting something out there, and you can't learn until it's out there. And at the same time, another key to the experimentation is the long game. When I launched Slopes in 2013, I got 1,000 downloads the first season. I think I made like $1,800 the first year or something like that. Like, it was a lot of people could have given up then. But it was only that, no, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to scratch that, try again, figure it out, and willing to play the long game, that after 3, 4, 5 years, it was like, okay, I'm full time now. I'm able to do this stuff. So get it out there with like a mind of learning and experimentation. And this is true with designs too, not just business model. Like, get something out there, play around, figure it out, see what works, and then don't get frustrated right away. Get something new out there and just kind of keep trying at it.
That's great advice, Curtis. I mean, I think a lot of times people, especially once they have a little bit of success, they kind of freeze their app and don't really experiment any longer after that. But the market moves quickly. The technologies move quickly, and you got to kind of stay on top of it.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we're going to move on now and speak to Joe Lee, whose app Marvel Future Revolution from Netmarble won an ADA. Congratulations, Joe.
Thank you. It's really exciting.
Could you tell us a little bit about Marvel Future Revolution?
Yeah, Marvel Future Revolution is a mobile, open-world action role-playing game that you can actually have a full superhero experience in the palm of your hand. Yeah, so we actually had this other game, my older game, which is on Marvel Future Fight, that actually just hit its seventh anniversary, which is still holding really strong. And we actually had a lot of good successes with it, and we actually learned a lot with it too. So, like, everyone across the board, we were thinking, all right, we had a lot of happy moments with this title, and then what do we want to do next with our game? So that's when we started thinking about like what kind of genre that it needs to be, and what kind of genre or what kind of game game mechanics that we would want for our game, because everyone was on, we were like kind of stuck on with the old game for such a long time. So like all these, like crazy things we want to try out. So that's how we came up to like, let's say like on par kind of a console superhero game. That was actually the vision that we had in our mind. So that's what we came up with. Like when you think of like mobile games, then there are like certain areas that you actually like expect, right? And that you don't expect as well. But back home in Korea and also in Asia, unlike how it is in the Western world here, mainstream gaming industry is evolving around the mobile platform instead of on the console. Because like console market is still, I would say, like a little bit limited to a limited crowd, while everybody has a phone around, everybody has the tablet around if you're actually a student or something.
Sure.
Right. So we tend to focus on like what can be played while you're still, like walking around or like you're just living your everyday life, but still having the intense experience. If you're a superhero or a fan or like a comic book nerd like me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's actually a great time to be a, Marvel fan.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's how we actually keep the game fresh. Like, we actually just had a pretty great update along with the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness movie season. So that's when we actually first introduced a new playable character, Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff. Well, I think our version of the Scarlet Witch is the prettiest and the most dynamic when it comes to gaming. So maybe, and also in the future, they're going to keep pumping out like some more shows and great more movies and stuff, and we can get inspired by, all those great stories and the great characters and stuff that we could actually bring to our game.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Nice.
That's cool.
Very nice. So, Joe, from a technological perspective, in bringing future revolution to Apple platforms, what kind of impact did the Metal framework have from a graphical standpoint, or also like in general, what other technologies for Apple devices, for Apple platforms, were you able to take advantage of for the game to make it, I mean, it looks fantastic. And so I'm curious to know more about sort of how did you build the game to really tap into the power of the latest Apple platforms?
Like I said a few minutes ago, being a game developer back home means you're always working on iOS and mobile platform, meaning the Metal and all those benefits has to be your common sense. It has to be built from the ground up with the idea that Metal's going to be kicking in at some point. And another specific benefit about playing our game on iPad and iPhone would be being able to leverage the power of the promotion feature.
Right.
That actually allows the game to actually play in a different frame rates, being automatically adjusted to what kind of a game scene that you're in, like when you're actually being up close and personal with your character, like in some cinematic cutscenes and stuff. Then the frame rate starts going really really rapidly. It gets basically uncapped, so like it looks like quasi real. But then actually, if you want to look farther into the space, like if you're like flying around in this space with your Iron Man character or like Star-Lord character, then it actually, it drops slightly down, but then at the same time, it lets you actually look into the further distance with a better result.
Sure.
Stuff like that. That's like really, so like, these are like some of the features that my friends at the development team there are like studying and stuff, and all these nice folks at Apple, they actually bring all these features, and then just telling us, are you actually having trouble with this feature? or this is actually the latest version of, this feature.
Sure.
And that kind of stuff. So we actually had that advantage too before we actually shipped the game.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. What are, you've got a bunch of different heroes that you can play as in this game. What are some of the challenges of bringing those characters that are so familiar from the comic books and movies to bring them to life in a game?
All of the characters are great in their own rights, but then there are always, strong fan groups that supports specific character, right? So if we actually, character balancing in terms of performance and trying to make that somewhat even and making it fair is always so important.
Sure.
Because all these our players are playing those characters. They made their selection to play as that character, based on their admiration and
Sure.
and stuff, that kind of strong support for that character. And we always have to make sure that our version of the character lives up to what they had in their mind. Yeah. So we get yelled out by the community a lot. Let's say some characters like Captain America, we don't allow him to actually fly around like Iron Man or Star-Lord or Storm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but they still should maintain or be toe to toe with those flying around characters. Right. Then we should actually think about what kind of other advantage we should give when it comes to battles and stuff. Where if we can't make them fair in one-to-one player versus player situation, then we actually find some advantage for that character to be more stronger in some ways for player versus enemy kind of situations and stuff like that. So everyone gets some accomplishment in a fair way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. One of the things about your game that I think is really unique is that it's been compared really favorably with console level games, right? And I think on mobile, a lot of times you'll see game reviewers say, well, it's just a mobile game. It's not really of the quality that you find on a console. But I think that your game really, as a lot of the reviews I've read of it, they really call out the fact that it has that kind of quality. What is it about, I guess, both your development process and the technologies you're using that have allowed you to kind of reach that level that I think a lot of people don't necessarily expect from mobile games?
Like I said, mainstream of the gaming community back home in Asia is more based around the mobile platform. So you're already seeing all these photorealistic kind of art style that is coming from mobile games and stuff. All these other competitors are already doing the great jobs. So, we already have the great franchise we're based on, which is Marvel. Mm-hmm. But then, we never think it's going to be enough. It has to be the quality and the game experience that actually gets you stand out. So, so we just didn't want to leave cut corners. Marvel fans will be comparing our game to their, console experiences. Mm-hmm. But then back home, back in Asia, they will be comparing our games to some other, full scale action RPGs that they play on their phones.
Sure.
Yeah. So we wanted to combine that and then make sure that we actually have edges, competitive edges from both perspectives. So that actually took a while for us to actually, complete the game.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. You've done a fantastic job. It really shines. It really stands out, I think, from the pack in terms of the way it plays on Apple's devices. Yeah, no, that's great. Federico, did you have any other questions?
No, I think that's all we had for. And again, I just want to say congratulations to all of you and thank you for coming on AppStories. It really is such a rare opportunity for us to be able to talk about Apple Design Award winners. And obviously you should be proud of yourself. Because we've been John and I, we always talk about this. MacStories has been around since 2009, and we probably reviewed thousands of apps. Easily, yeah. I think. But Apple Design Award winners, they always have that something special about it. It's it's hard to describe whether it's accessibility or whether it's design or interactions or, the way that a game takes advantage of metal or the way that Procreate integrates with the Apple Pencil and multi-touch on the iPad or slopes and the 3D and the OpenGL accelerated graphics. Like, there's always something special, and it's never a coincidence that certain apps win an Apple Design Award. So thank you and congratulations again.
Yeah, thanks to all three of you. It's been great to have you, and thank you to Apple for putting this together, because it really is a special episode for us to be able to put this together and kind of shine a light on at least a handful of the winners of the ADAs this year. And of course, thanks to our sponsor, Collide. You can find me and Federico all the time over at MacStories.net. Federico is on Twitter and Instagram, where he is at Viticci. That's VITICCI, and I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you soon, Federico.
Ciao, John.